something extraordinary is happening in Nigeria. A country that for decades carried the proud title of Africa's oil giant is now rewriting its story in a way the world never expected. But let us pause for a moment and ask, how can a nation so rich in oil, so blessed with black gold beneath its soil, ever find itself importing fuel from the very countries it once supplied? This is not just an economic question. It is a political question. It is a question of power, dignity, and destiny. And it is a question that touches every Nigerian family, every elderly man or woman who remembers the long lines at fuel stations, the frustration of waiting hours just to buy petrol, while knowing full well that their land was overflowing with oil. For decades, Nigeria stood tall as Africa's biggest producer of crude oil. Millions of barrels were pumped every single day, shipped away across oceans to distant refineries in Europe, in America, in Asia. The world admired our resources, and yet Nigerians themselves suffered. People waited in queues. Buses could not run. Generators went silent in the heat of the night. Ordinary citizens asked, how can this be? How can the land of oil be the land of fuel scarcity? And then, in early 2024, the world saw something that left many shaking their heads in disbelief. For the very first time in history, the United States exported more crude oil to Nigeria than Nigeria exported to the US. Think about that. Nigeria, with its vast oil reserves, importing oil from America. To many outside observers, this looked like a humiliation. It looked like the downfall of Africa's oil giant. But is that really the truth, or is there a deeper story here, one of strategy, ambition, and transformation? Let us not forget, Nigeria has always been rich in crude oil, but poor in refined fuel. We exported the raw product and bought back the finished goods, gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, at enormous cost. It was a cycle of dependency, one that drained our economy of billions every single year. Tens of billions that could have built schools, hospitals, and roads instead went abroad to enrich foreign powers. Is this not a form of economic colonization? Is it not a modern chain binding our people to the will of others? And so, when Nigeria began importing American oil in 2024, many saw weakness. But those who looked closer understood the truth. This was not weakness. It was preparation. Nigeria was not bending its knee. Nigeria was preparing to stand taller than ever before. At the heart of this turning point is one project, one colossal structure that is changing the destiny of a nation, the Dangote Refinery. Imagine a facility so vast it covers over 2,600 hectares, land the size of 7,000 football fields. Imagine machines capable of processing 650,000 barrels of crude every single day. This is not just another refinery. This is the largest single-train refinery in the world, a fortress of steel and fire built on the shores of Lagos. And yet, even this giant needed to take its first breath. To begin its engines, to refine its first drops of fuel, the Dangote Refinery required a special kind of crude oil, light, sweet crude, abundant in the shale fields of America. This is why U.S. oil flowed into Nigerian ports, not because Nigeria had failed, but because Nigeria was preparing to unleash its greatest strength. This moment, when the world mocked us for importing oil, was actually the beginning of our liberation. For too long, Nigeria's economy was trapped in the hands of foreign refineries. For too long, European ports in Rotterdam, Antwerp, and Marseille dictated our fuel supply. For too long, Nigerians paid the price of dependency. But now, the question before us is clear. Will we continue to bow to this cycle, or will we rise and take control of our destiny? When the United States became a net exporter of crude oil to Nigeria, some asked, is this the proof that Nigeria has failed? Or is this the proof that Nigeria is preparing for something the world cannot yet imagine? My brothers and sisters, elders of this land, we know the answer. We know that history does not belong to those who surrender. It belongs to those who dare to change the rules. The truth is this. Nigeria importing oil in 2024 was not a symbol of shame. It was the drumbeat before a revolution. It was the spark before the fire. It was the final step before Nigeria declared to the world, "We will no longer be slaves to foreign refineries. We will no longer buy back our own wealth at a higher price. We will refine it here, on our soil, with our hands, for our people." So let us ask again, what does it mean when the oil giant of Africa imports fuel? Does it mean weakness, or does it mean strength hidden beneath strategy? Does it mean surrender, or does it mean preparation for a battle long overdue? Because here is the truth. A nation cannot call itself sovereign if it cannot fuel its own people. And Nigeria for too long lived in that contradiction. A giant with bound hands, a rich man living in debt, a nation of oil, yet a nation of shortages. But today things are changing. Today we stand on the edge of transformation, and the story begins not with shame, but with courage, not with weakness, but with vision. The Dangote refinery is not only a machine, it is a message that Nigeria will no longer be a supplier of raw wealth to the world, but a producer of power, energy, and dignity. And so, the next time someone tells you that Nigeria once imported oil from America, tell them, yes, we did. And that was the moment the world should have realized we were preparing to rise. Who is the man behind this audacious dream? Who has the courage, the wealth, and the stubborn vision to look at Africa's greatest weakness and declare, "I will fix it"? That man is Aliko Dangote. For many, Dangote is simply known as the richest man in Africa. But wealth alone does not explain this story. Because many wealthy men are content to sit back, to protect what they have, to build mansions and empires for themselves. But Dangote chose another path. He chose to gamble his fortune, his reputation, his very legacy on one idea, that Africa must take control of its own resources. Let us not forget, for decades, Nigerians cried out about fuel shortages, about dependency on Europe, about billions lost every year. Politicians came and went, governments made promises, but nothing changed. The cycle continued. Export crude, import petrol, rich in resources, poor in power. Was this destiny? Was this punishment? Or was it simply the failure of leadership? Dangote looked at this cycle and said, "No, enough. This must end in our generation." Think of the scale of his decision. $20 billion, the largest private investment in Africa's history. Do you know how risky that is? Entire governments have hesitated to make such a commitment. Foreign investors refuse to touch it. The IMF and World Bank never dreamed it possible. But Dangote said, "If no one will do it, I will." And here lies the political message. One man's vision can sometimes achieve what decades of governments could not. What does that say about our leaders? What does that say about the courage of the private citizen compared to the caution of the state? Dangote is not just building a refinery. He is building a statement. A declaration to the world that Nigeria will no longer accept being a dumping ground for refined products. That Africa will no longer be chained to the role of supplier of raw goods. But how do you turn such a vision into reality? Let us step inside the giant, the Dangote Refinery. Located in the Lekki Free Trade Zone just outside Lagos, the refinery is like a city unto itself. Covering 235 hectares, its size is almost beyond imagination. 7,000 football fields laid side by side. Towers of steel rise into the sky. Pipelines snake across the land like veins of a new industrial heart. The facility has its own power plant, its own pipelines, and even its own deep-sea port, capable of docking the largest oil tankers in the world. This is not just a refinery, it is an entire ecosystem. And what makes it special? Efficiency. The Dangote Refinery is what experts call a single-train refinery. What does that mean? It means the entire operation, 650,000 barrels of oil every single day, flows through one continuous connected system. No interruptions, no multiple scattered plants. One train, one chain, one mighty engine. It is the largest single-train refinery on the planet. And let us pause for a moment. Why is this important? Because efficiency is power. While Europe relies on outdated plants built decades ago, while America struggles with multiple fragmented facilities, Nigeria has built something brand new with the latest technology, designed to compete head-on with the giants. Inside this colossal machine, crude oil is transformed into the lifeblood of modern civilization. Petrol for cars, diesel for trucks, jet fuel for planes, liquefied petroleum gas for cooking, even polypropylene, the plastic used in everything from furniture to medical supplies. And unlike the past, where Nigeria exported crude and imported these products at inflated prices, now we produce them here, we sell them here, and we export them to the world. Do you see the meaning? For the first time, the chain is broken. The value remains in Nigeria. And let us not forget the symbolic power of the refinery's private deep-sea port. For generations, Nigerian oil was shipped to Rotterdam, to Antwerp, to Marseille. Now, ships from Asia, America, even Saudi Arabia will dock at Nigerian shores, not to deliver charity, not to dictate terms, but to buy our refined products. The tide of history has turned. But of course, such a project is not just about machines, it is about people. Thousands of Nigerians work at this refinery. Engineers, technicians, drivers, builders. Each one of them is part of something bigger than themselves. Each one of them knows they are not just earning a salary. They are writing history. And still, some critics ask, why should one man hold such power? Why should one billionaire control the destiny of Nigeria's fuel? Is this not too dangerous, too concentrated, too dependent on a single figure? These are fair questions. They force us to think about the role of private vision in public destiny. But perhaps the deeper question is this: what happens when governments fail to act? What happens when the state cannot or will not build? Do we prefer endless dependency? Or do we accept that sometimes one man's ambition can carry the burden of a nation? Because make no mistake, without Dangote's vision, Nigeria would still be sending crude abroad and begging for refined fuel in return. With his refinery, the equation has changed forever. Let us consider the numbers again. 650,000 barrels per day, enough to satisfy all of Nigeria's domestic demand, and still have surplus for export, enough to make Nigeria not just self-sufficient, but a player on the world stage. And think about the impact on our politics. For decades, fuel subsidies drained Nigeria's treasury. Imports created corruption. Middlemen enriched themselves, while ordinary people suffered. With local refining, that corruption weakens. That drain slows. That suffering eases. Is this not the kind of revolution Nigeria has always needed? Not of slogans, not of speeches, but of steel and fire, of machines that actually deliver results? So we must ask ourselves, will this refinery remain just the dream of one man, or will it become the foundation for a new Nigeria? Will our leaders build on this momentum, or will they waste it as they have wasted so much before? For the elders of this land, who remember independence in 1960, who remember the oil boom of the 1970s, who remember the endless promises of prosperity, perhaps this refinery is the first time you can see a tangible structure, a fortress of industry that delivers what politicians only talked about. But let us be clear, the Dangote refinery is not a miracle. It is not the end of Nigeria's struggles. It is the beginning of a new struggle. A struggle to control, to sustain, to expand. Because as powerful as this refinery is, it cannot solve corruption by itself. It cannot erase poverty overnight. But it can give us something we have not had in generations, a fighting chance. And maybe that is the greatest political message here. Dangote has shown that Africa can dream big, build big, and compete big. He has shown that we do not always need to wait for aid, for loans, for approval from outside powers. We can build with our own hands, with our own money, with our own courage. So when you look at this refinery, do not see only pipes and towers. See a challenge to the old order. See a message to Europe. Africa will no longer be your client forever. See a message to America. We will not always be your buyer. We can be your competitor. See a message to Nigerians. Your country is not condemned to dependency. This is not just Aliko Dangote's refinery. This is Nigeria's refinery. This is Africa's refinery. This is a fortress built not only of steel, but of pride, ambition, and sovereignty. And the question that remains, the question only time can answer, is this. Will Nigeria use this gift wisely? Will it harness this refinery to build schools, hospitals, industries, and a stronger economy? Or will it fall once again into the traps of corruption and mismanagement? The vision is here. The machine is alive. The opportunity is real. The question is, do we have the courage to make it last? When the first flames roared inside the Dangote refinery, it was not merely an industrial spark. It was a political declaration, a historic moment that spoke to every Nigerian who has endured decades of dependency and humiliation. For too long, Nigeria, the land blessed with oil beneath its soil, has been reduced to an importer of fuel, a giant with boundless resources, yet forced to beg for refined products. Does that not sound like a cruel joke written by history itself? Year after year, billions of dollars bled away from the nation, flowing into the hands of foreign refineries. Money that should have built hospitals in the villages, money that should have repaired schools for our grandchildren, money that should have built roads in the north and electrified the south. Instead, those billions sailed across oceans, enriching those who already viewed Africa as a playground for their exploitation. But now, Nigeria turns the wheel of destiny. The Dangote refinery is not just a factory, it is a symbol of resistance. It means no longer shall the Nigerian farmer watch his profits shrink because imported fuel eats away his income. It means no longer shall the Lagos taxi driver sleep in queues at empty petrol stations. It means the market woman in Port Harcourt may finally see stability in prices. More than economics, it means dignity. For what kind of freedom can a nation boast of if every drop of petrol in its motorcycle comes from a foreign land? Independence is not merely in the anthem. It is in the fuel that powers our homes, our markets, and our future. This refinery is not just Nigeria's project. It is Africa's statement. Ask yourself, why is it that a continent with such abundant resources, Nigeria, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, still depends on refined fuel shipped from Europe? Why does a farmer in Ghana, a driver in Senegal, or a teacher in Kenya pay prices dictated in Rotterdam or Marseille, rather than by their fellow Africans? The Dangote refinery offers a different horizon, a horizon where Africa fuels itself, where the chains of neo-colonial economics are broken, where trade flows not across the Atlantic, but within the mother continent. Is that not the very dream that the great Pan-African leaders like Nkrumah, Azikiwe, and Mandela spoke of? But dreams demand courage. Will African governments rally behind this vision? Or will they bow once again to the soft chains of international lenders, to the seductive promises of the IMF, to the handshakes of leaders in Paris and Washington? Elders of this land, you have witnessed colonialism, its exit, and its ugly reincarnation through economic dependence. Should we not rise to say enough? Should we not demand an Africa where our own children set the price of the energy we consume, rather than faceless traders in Europe? The refinery is more than steel and fire. It is a call to arms for an Africa that owns its destiny. Do not be deceived into thinking the world applauds Nigeria's rise without concern. In Washington, in Brussels, in Beijing, eyes are watching, nervous, calculating, unsettled. Will the United States sit quietly as Nigeria reduces its dependence on imported products, weakening American influence in African energy markets? Will Europe smile while its refineries lose their most loyal customers? Will China, hungry and strategic, allow Nigeria to emerge as an independent power at the crossroads of the Atlantic? A self-sufficient Nigeria is not just an economic challenge, it is a geopolitical earthquake. For centuries, Africa has been treated as a market, not a maker, a consumer, not a competitor. Now, this refinery signals a shift. Africa is not just consuming the leftovers of the world's industries, it is building its own. This makes global powers uncomfortable. And if the powerful grow uneasy, it means Nigeria is moving in the right direction. But make no mistake, unease breeds interference. Already whispers emerge of international lobbying, of pressure to restrict, of attempts to sow doubt and fear. The question is, will Nigeria stand firm, or will it once again bend, as it has bent too many times in history, to the will of outsiders? Yet, let us not blind ourselves with celebration, for every great project carries its shadows. One question echoes: why should a refinery of national importance rest in the hands of a single man, Aliko Dangote? Have we traded one form of dependency for another? From foreign nations to a single billionaire? Is this the future we imagined? Others whisper of corruption, the cancer that has crippled Nigeria for decades. Can such a massive project escape the grip of politicians who feast upon public wealth like vultures circling a dying body? Will the refinery's profits truly reach the poor, or will they vanish into the bank accounts of the powerful few? We cannot dismiss these doubts. They are the questions of a vigilant people. For Nigeria has been betrayed too many times, by colonial rulers, by dictators, by politicians who spoke of service but practiced theft. Will Dangote's refinery be remembered as liberation, or as another grand illusion, a monument built not for the people but for pride and profit? These are not questions to ignore. They are questions that must haunt every leader, every businessman, every citizen who believes in Nigeria's future. The Dangote refinery stands tall, not only as a structure of steel but as a test of spirit. It asks Nigeria, do you have the courage to claim what is yours? It asks Africa, will you unite behind self-reliance, or will you continue to crawl under the table of foreign masters? This refinery could be the turning point, the moment our children will read about in history books and say, this was the day Nigeria began to rise. Or it could be yet another missed opportunity, a story of potential squandered, of greed triumphing over vision. Elders of this nation, you who have carried the weight of disappointments across decades, do you not deserve to see, before your eyes close, an Africa that stands proud and independent? The question is not whether the refinery works. The question is whether we work with it, whether our leaders govern with integrity, whether our people demand accountability, whether we seize this chance with both hands and refuse to let it slip away. Dangote Refinery is not just Dangote's dream, it is Nigeria's trial, it is Africa's question mark. So let me ask you, and let history echo your answer. Will this refinery free us, or will it fool us? Will it make us masters of our destiny, or servants in a new disguise? The fire has been lit, the smoke has risen, the world is watching, and now the choice is ours.